go in thinking, and we're going to have a good conversation after Jonas's paper. Jonas, come and speak to us. Theology of play is a mode of dissent in digital culture. If you want to find out about Jonas, it's here.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's given me the opportunity to explore an idea that first came up in the seminar, as often does. It might just be that the algorithmic genies have detected a particular weakness in my time management. But I'm finding I'm constantly being targeted by promotions of the latest AI time management applications. Build your website in no time. Magically create new spaces in your calendar, very convenient. Boost your PowerPoint, I'm sure we've all done that. Elevate your spiritual journey. Save valuable time through our sermon preparation app. Such language is by no means uniquely used in relation to AI. It's ubiquitous in society at large, in particular in digital culture. So the argument of this paper is not so much the rationality, productivity, efficiency that fuels technoculture needs to be rejected altogether. Rather, there needs to be a readjustment so that a fuller humanity might emerge. So my purpose is to explore how a theology of play can be mobilized as a source of dissent in digital culture. I use play as dissent as a heuristic framework to tease out some of the questions that this gives rise to. And by doing so, I both highlight the possibility of play and problematize it under the conditions of digitality. Philosophers and theologians have lamented the impact of modern technology on human autonomy and its drive towards conformity. The technique has gripped the world. The applications of science to standardize, controllable, and replicable procedures for the sake of efficiency has occurred within every sphere of society. Its totalizing process subjugates everything and everyone. Technique enslaves people while preferring them with a mere illusion of freedom, all while tyrannically conforming them to the demands of technological society with its complex of artificial operational objectives. The digital marks both the continuation and disruption of the logic of la technique. The race for standardized, controllable, and replicable procedures for the sake of efficiency is, in some ways, has been accelerated. Algorithmic manipulation and digital surveillance have only served and extended the capacity for the control that Ellul feared. If industrial revolution commodified the earth, the digital data-driven economy commodifies the human. Under surveillance capitalism, the tech industry's business model is based on monetizing personal data. With the rise of AI applications, the value of data is only increasing. It reinforces the emphasis on human cognition. It is nevertheless difficult to assess the extent to which la technique or surveillance capitalism is impacting us as a society and individually. The tech industry attempts to manipulate are not necessarily successful. We intuitively feel the impact, but then the gaze of theory trains us to do so. Perhaps it's a matter of degree. My interest here is less with the growing power of the tech industry, concerning though this is, and more with the powerful narratives within digital culture that shape human self-perception. If human imagination gives birth to technological innovation, such innovation is in some ways reflected or reflects human culture and the stories that we tell about the world. One such foundational cultural narrative of the digital can be traced to the Cartesian anthropology that privileges human cognition and rationality. This anthropology undergirds much of modern technology. not only does such technology mirror this aspect of humanity, but also reflects back onto us. That is, humans begin to be measures against efficient machines. For example, with the rise of the industrial technology and more lately computerized technology, humans have feared being put out of work by machines. So far, the predictions have been a bit exaggerated, and has only been materialized in localized areas. So I'm thinking about industrial towns in the US. More often than not, humans have been able to reskill and find new areas of work, and have had to work even harder. In the context of work, the value of efficiency and pressure towards greater efficiency are felt across most spheres of society. The efficiency of the machine becomes the standard against which we measure ourselves. This effect is only heightened when technological innovation is deliberately predicated upon human capabilities. Whilst not all AI applications are anthropomorphized, so thinking about kind of things like traffic flow controls, nevertheless, its pioneers certainly envisioned that this technology would replicate and even extend human intelligence. Technology has always mirrored humans, but nowhere is this as apparent as with AI. If we envision AI as mirroring human characteristics, the risk is that it also reinforces our self-identity as humans. This is one of the key points here. Robert Song suggests the problem is not that the robots become like us, but that we become like them. Like much of modern technology, AI imbues an anthropology that emphasizes human rationality. In other words, the anthropomorphized view of AI is predicated upon an anthropology that reduces humans to their rationality or even data. This finds its ultimate expression in the post-human vision of a datafied immortality, by which the human person is uploaded into a digital existence. Rationality and efficiency are not inherently evil. There are times when we would wish for a bit more of them. However, if we start understanding ourselves, our own humanity through this lens, it leads to reductionist and exclusionary anthropologies. I'm not least thinking about the implication for how we viewed people with cognitive disabilities. The emphasis on cognition may further downplay the significance of human embodiment. It is, of course, possible to argue that the roots of rationality, efficiency, and productivity is imbued in modern technology and science can be traced to Christian theology. One could here cite Max Weber's Protestant work ethics, or Lynn White's tracing of the exploitative thrust of modern industrialization to Western Christianity's anthropomorphism and it's I forgot the word. I'll move on. I'll come back to me. Or even go back a bit further to Augustine theological anthropology that privileges human rationality. Yet if theology is part of the problem, perhaps it could be part of the solution, or at least help to forge an alternative vision. This arguably is how dissenters have already operated, challenging dominant theological narratives and the socio-political implications. So what alternative theological anthropology could be forged? So to be clear, I'm not arguing for technological determinism. Digital culture is many things, with many competing narratives with their own socio-political trajectories, and they're constantly being negotiated. Arguably, the malleability of digital comes loaded with possibilities of agency, creativity, and yes, even dissent. Naturally, there are different ways that such dissent could be articulated in practice. Some have, for example, suggested that an ethics of AI needs to start with ontology. We should point out that computerized intelligence is very different from that of humans. Education, resisting anthropomorphizing language, and demystifying and debunking AI then might go some ways, in developing a different narrative. However, it's difficult to resist AI's underlying discord of rationality and efficiency, and it's so ingrained into the social fabric of digital societies. And despite us knowing that AI is computational calculation, its personified appearance is powerfully seductive. So perhaps we could then return to Ellul to uncritically translate Ellul's analysis to digital culture might risk underestimating human agency in this context. However, his advice to Christians living under La Technique are worth noting. In a series of interviews in 1981, he suggested 3 roles that Christians should adopt. Firstly, critical acceptance. We do not need to reject La Technique altogether. In fact, we can't. We should rather subject it to an iconoclastic critique that exposes its deified religious characters, which says. Secondly, we should be bearers of hope. Hope not in human capacity, but in God. God loves. God's love means that there is hope for tomorrow, not technological progress. I'm less here convinced that the two have to be opposites. So I'm thinking about a theology of co-creation, for example. And even Ellul reads the glory of the nations that will enter the New Jerusalem, depicted in Revelations 21, as including technique. And then finally he suggests that we should be bearers of freedom. And this refers to an ethics of enabling people to make their own decisions. There might be a slight tension here in Ellul's argument between his own technological determinism and the insistence of the possibility of human agency. But he says that Christian is one who brings as much free play as possible into the parts of society that are linked to one another. These all seem like good suggestions, but for the purpose of my paper, it's the last one that's of particular interest. Ellul does not offer much clarity on what such play might entail, other than calling upon Christians, and I'm assuming others too, to bring as much freedom as possible within technological society. So why play? Well, there's something about freedom that seems to be significant. Media theorist and Jesuit Walter Ong suggests, as I quote, the world of play is the world of freedom itself, of activity for its own sake, of spontaneity, and of pure realization. There is a rich repository of sources within the Christian tradition to draw upon to create this theology of play. Whilst we don't find lots and lots of passages in the Bible, at least explicit references in the Bible, we can nevertheless find enough material to start constructing one. And here we can cite the eschatological vision of the prophet Zechariah as an example, in which the children playing in the streets is a sign of God's redemption. Perhaps Zechariah's prophecy resonates with Jesus' invitation in the gospel to be childlike, to bring about the kingdom of God. Or to give another example, several of the patristics interpreted Proverbs 8:27-31 Christologically. In Gregory of Nazianzus' interpretation, and I quote, "The Son is called child because of his proceeding everlasting from the Father, because in the dewy freshness and springtime beauty of his eternal youth, he eternally enacts a game before his Father." Maximus Confessor places play at the center of the Godhead. The play of the Logos in creation reflects the divine dance enacted throughout eternity. Moving to the scholastics, Thomas Aquinas suggests that play is essential for the good life. And he says, and I quote here, "Unmitigated seriousness betokens a lack of virtue because it wholly despises play, which is necessary for a good life, as is rest." Johann Huitzinger's influence is felt on a number of more recent theologians. Writing in the 1960s, Hugh Rana suggests that to play is to participate in the freedom of God. The homo ludens is as such predicated upon the Deus ludens. Here, human playfulness ontologically reflects a God who plays. Referencing the Creatio ex nihilo, Jürgen Moltmann constructs a theology of play as an antidote towards the utilitarian thrust of modern society. Human worth in such society is predicated upon their ability to be productive. Moltmann, however, suggests that God creates out of non-necessity or groundlessness. Creation is purely the manifestation of God's love or pleasure, an act of freedom and of God's play, a play of his groundlessness and inscrutable wisdom. For Moltmann, then, games are expressions of human freedom and even of liberation. Coming from Moltmann, it's not surprising that play takes on a liberative and eschatological character. Playfulness is possible for people who have been liberated from death through the resurrection of Jesus. Joyous play is liberating in that it subverts the politics of fear by which the tyrants rule. We play the kingdom into being. We play is an anticipatory eschatological practice. We play in preparation for the new creation. From these theologies, we can detect certain conditions for play to be plays to be free, liberative, and joyous, all of which are essential to human flourishing. It echoes some of the values valorized within the dissenters' tradition. It promises to be an antidote to the world of efficiency, productivity, and utilitarianism. This suggests an alternative anthropology in which play is ontological. It is not necessarily that we suspend our rationality, but that through our imagination we apply it to different ends. Since our lives are unavoidably enmeshed with digital culture, we have to find ways to play within it. So what I'm suggesting is that we apply the critical acceptance that Elul spoke of. If we are, as Johann Huizinga suggests, homo ludens, people that play, this invites to a different anthropology, a different narrative. And this is where the work of imagination begins. And I'm hoping that you're already playing with some thoughts in your own mind. So what possibilities of play do digital culture, environments, and technology afford us? How can reductionist anthropologies be resisted and subverted to imaginaries of play? So I'm going to risk giving some examples. Play is already prevalent in digital culture, with video gaming the most immediate example that comes to mind. It would be interesting to know whether for Rana or Moltmann, gaming would constitute the kind of free play that they imagined in the 1960s and 70s. With so much pervasive tech design to keep gamers hooked, it raises questions as to whether gaming constitutes free play. There's lots of different types of games in gaming, and we should be careful to make sweeping claims. However, Matthew Pulis' survey amongst Maltese youth, which found that his respondents spent on average 8 hours a day gaming, is suggestive. A recent study by Pew Research suggests that gamers themselves have an ambiguous relation to gaming. Many spoke positively about the social aspects, but almost half of the respondents admit that it has negatively impacted their sleep. Most gamers play for playing's sake. It gives them a sense of pleasure and enjoyment. And much playing in digital culture is to provide respite from an otherwise monotony, the monotony of life. I don't believe that we need to think disparagingly about entertainment, but it's worth noting that playing for entertainment is different from playing, and this is again a citation from Moltmann, playing with the future in order to get to know it. Such eschatological playing is not escapist. It's played in the midst of life. It is more like the play of a child who plays by imitation and therefore plays in preparation of the future, of a future role or vocation. Perhaps something akin to this is how some churches have been inviting members to create worlds in Minecraft as a means of discipleship and for building intergenerational relationships. And this seems to be closer, I think, to what Moltmann had in mind when he spoke about the eschatological play. A question that's never far away from a liberative perspective of play is who gets to play. We are all too aware of the digital divide between those who can and cannot participate. Everyone can play, but not everyone can play video games. Beyond the video games, traces of plays can be found in gamification, which is widely applied in digital societies. Gamification is often used for educational ends. Children's learning have been widely gamified through digital means. In religious education, Bible reading has been gamified through things like YouVersion's streak function. I'm not sure if they still are using it. Or through games as Bible trivia. But gamification has been applied in a whole host of other areas, such as marketing, health, politics, and work. Think about how tech firms like Google operate. Their headquarters are places where workers are encouraged to live their whole lives, with access to food, resting rooms, gaming rooms, and community. Carolyn Chen notes a shift in white-collar work in America over the last half a century. She suggests that workers in the past sold their time and freedom to work at companies and institutions, whilst meaning was found outside of the workplace in friendships and family life, in leisure and religion, and we could probably add here play. However, through the constant pressure towards greater profitability, companies have sought to downsize and reduce the workforce at the expense of workers' leisure time. The increased pressure not only meant longer working hours, but that work itself has been made more enjoyable as companies seek to offer meaning within the workplace. Chen's main thesis is that in order to instill a fierce loyalty, companies have come to resemble religious communities in which workers, and I quote, belong to a shared community and believe in a higher and transcendent goal. Religion and play, then, are being instrumentalized for further efficiency to foster devotion to the aims and goals of the corporation. Is this an example of liberating play or a cynical instrumentalization of play for corporate gain? Well, Walter Ong suggests that whilst the world of play is the world of freedom itself, it cannot be separated from work. The brilliant mechanic loves tinkering with the engine. The best scholar plays with ideas. The child learns through playful imitation. And the reverse is also true. Work is required in order to play well. And think here about the dedication of a sports person. The trend of gamification in digital culture is therefore in of itself something that a theology of play could affirm. However, the telos is important. In the context of work, play is then possible at an individual level, even when the game has been introduced for utilitarian ends. Play in such a sense become dissenting, for the outcomes of play are always unpredictable. And then finally, we have to talk about AI and play, don't we? Interestingly, freedom is... Okay. Interestingly, freedom is a prevalent theme in sci-fi depictions of AI. Especially humanoids are depicted as even breaking free from their human creators to do evil, or in other cases to do good, acting more humane than humans. Sci-fi apart. AI, at least as of today, has no agency. AI has no freedom. And despite the odd hallucination, it follows the rules and patterns that it's been programmed to follow. It is therefore difficult to see how AI itself can constitute play. However, it might appear to do so to us, and in so doing, it invites us to playfully engage. Has anyone asked Siri or Alexa to sing a song or tell a joke? Well, we've been doing that in my family. Then you kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about. It is interesting for all its promises to make our work more efficient. The recent developments of AI applications such as ChatGPT 3, 4, 4.5, whatever, have so far failed to live up to expectations. For all the hype, industry insiders are suggesting that companies are struggling to find ways to make the technology meaningfully useful. And perhaps this is not such a bad thing, for in the meantime, we will continue to play with it. All the above examples of play are within digital environments and through digital technology. They also illustrate the ambiguity of play. And I'm not sure if what I've suggested is dissenting enough for dissenters. I could have developed examples that exemplify the possibility of play as resistance, for example, through hacking as play. But here I argue less for the rejection of the digital and more for finding a way through it, to embody a different narrative within it, however complex that might be. That is not to negate the possibility or the desirability of play outside in non-digital ways. Digital technology is ontological in that it pertains to our being. Physiologically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, we are inseparable from our technologies. There cannot be a sharp demarcation between human and machine. We are inherently, inevitably technological beings. So the question is not so much how do we retain our humanity in digital culture, but rather what kind of humans are we becoming in digital culture, and what kind of humans ought we to be. It is here that a measure of dissenting play can encourage a different mode of being. Play reminds us that our worth is not predicated on our utility. Play invites us to joy and freedom through our technologies and within technological environments. And through it, perhaps a different human self-understanding and a different relation to our technologies can emerge.